One of the main reasons we do the zero product property is to be able to solve equations, because that's what we do in algebra, solve equations. So let's take a look at these two problems that look similar, but there are different ways to solve each one of them. In number one, if x times x minus 3 equals 0, then I'd like to write down what I know. And I see that it is a multiplication problem equal to 0. And I know that if I have a multiplication problem equal to 0, that one of the numbers I multiply has to be a 0. And so in this case, I have to realize that x represents a number, so that means that x is the number equal to 0. Or I have to realize that x minus 3 represents a number, so that means x minus 3 could be equal to 0. And then just make sure you solve each one of these equations for x. There's nothing to solve here. It's already done. In this second one, I need to add 3 to both sides. And so I get x equals positive 3. Now let's take a look at the second example. If x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0, then the way it's written right here is we really know nothing, because in order to use the zero product property, I have to have it equal to 0, which I have it equal to 0, but I have to have a product equal to 0. So what I need to do is make the left-hand side of that equation, I need to turn this into a product. And the way that I change that into a product is I need to use one of my favorite F words, and hopefully the F word you're thinking of is factor. So let's fix the left-hand side of number 2. That is a trinomial, so it's going to break up into 2 sets of parentheses, and it's going to be equal to 0. If I take x times x, that's going to give me x squared. And then in the second blanks, I got to think of numbers that multiply together to give me 15. And numbers that multiply to give me 15 are 15 and 1 and 5 and 3. I think I'm going to try the 5 and the 3 first. 5 and 3. And I need to get a negative 2 when I add these together. So I need to have a negative 5 and a positive 3. And then double check this in your mind just to make sure it works. If I take x times x, I get x squared. If I take negative 5 times positive 3, I get negative 15. And if you check the outside product, we have a positive 3x. And if you check the inside product, we have a negative 5x, which would add up to negative 2x. So I've rewritten the left-hand side of that equation. So if x minus 5 times x plus 3 equals 0, then let's write down what my conclusion is. Well, I know that the number represented by x minus 5 has to be 0, or I know that the number represented by x plus 3 has to be 0. And then just make sure you solve these equations. I'm going to have to add 5 to both sides. So I would get x equals 5 as one of my answers. And in this other one, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So I would get x equal to negative 3. And those are my two answers for number 2. So the bottom line is, if we're going to use the zero product property, make sure you have it equal to 0. And make sure you have a product, a multiplication problem, equal to 0.